pick the right tool for the right job, and keep that in mind. I mean, you're not gonna build a house with just a screwdriver. There's other tools that you can use to make life easier, so it has to work and fit the job. Okay, so collars. They are all different kinds of collars. I'm gonna cover a couple and the rest will be up here. Flat collar. This is probably the most common thing that I see people have on their dogs. Pros and cons. Cons, if you're trying to teach a dog how to walk, they'll just gag themselves. The pressure comes across too far. This is fantastic when you have a puppy and you want to kind of hold on to them. It's also great for holding tags. This specifically is an agitation collar. So for a protection dog, kind of actually makes them more agitated. So great for agitation, not so great for leash walking, unless your dog's already perfect walking on leash. Okay, so this is a slip lead or a dominant dog collar or a Volhard training collar, all kinds of different names. And essentially it's a fitted choke chain, but it's nylon. So it fits right up underneath the dog's neck and clips on, and then the leash clips onto here. So it has a corrective element where it will tighten and loosen. Pros to this over something like a choke chain is that it's fitted. This works well for reactive dogs. You would definitely never tie a dog out on this. So this is an option that I use quite often. But as soon as if the dog starts pulling and pulling and pulling on this, we gotta switch it up. Okay, prong collar. Looks like a medieval torture device. This is actually one of my favorite tools to use, especially for people with mobility issues and a big, strong dog. First time I saw one of these, I thought it was a joke. It doesn't go over their head. You adjust it like this, take clips out in order to connect them right up behind the neck and clip in. Should be fitting up here. There's a whole video on prong collars. Great tool, not for every dog, not for every person, but an amazing tool if you really can't get leash walking down properly. Okay, there are also martingale collars. The advantage to a martingale is that it's basically a flat collar with a little bit of corrective factor, so it will tighten and loosen. The reason I like this tool is because the dog can't slip it over their head. The reason I don't like this tool is because as soon as it tightens, it's basically just a flat collar again. So this is something that I don't use so much anymore. These seem to be popular in the greyhound world. They make them very big so that it disperses a lot of pressure and the dog can't slip it off its head. Choke chain or a check chain. I don't use these anymore simply because you have to fit them over the dog's head. So by the time you actually pull, so let's say this slip lead was a choke chain and this was my dog's head. By the time you actually pull and make the check or the whatever, you end up just choking them. And then they'll just pull you down the road, gagging themselves. Not a fan of these anymore. So not a huge fan. I'd like to use something a little bit more effective. Star mark. Never actually used one of these. The idea is that it's a prettier prong collar. The points are a little bit more dispersed. They're made out of plastic. Now, there are 400,000 other kinds of collars that you can get for your dog. For me, the answer is it's got to be right for you and your dog. Okay, electric tools, very touchy subject, and I believe personally in the next couple of years we're going to see most of them banned anyway, because people are misusing the tool and people are going out and buying this tool with no proper education. And when you put an electric tool on your dog, you really need to know what it is that you're doing. They can be amazingly effective tools for getting 100% recall, dealing with reactive, aggressive dogs, or just having hands on your dog at a distance. However, there's a huge difference between an e-collar and a shock collar. Essentially what it comes down to is the quality of stimulation, the levels of stimulation, and the accuracy of it or the dependability of it. So when training with electric e-collars, my brand of preference is e-collar technologies. Not only is the actual electric stimulation the closest thing to a TENS unit, like they use at physiotherapy, but their product has a bunch of really awesome features like flashlights and fully waterproof and long range, and their customer service is amazing. However, there are a lot of products out there on the market that have the same marketing, 100 individual levels of stimulation and whatnot, but you know, they're like $60 versus an e-collar from e-collar technologies and other companies is in the $300-400 range. So there's obviously going to be a difference. So unless you're going to go see a professional trainer who has lots of experience with electronic tools, I do not recommend them. That being said, there are a lot of trainers out there that can help you use this tool properly. Types of tools are electric bark collars, which come in the form of electric stimulation or a spray. So the dog barks and it blows citronella in their face, not so nice. So there's two kinds of boundary collars. There's one where you bury a line and the dog wears a collar and they approach the line, they hear a beep, and then they get electric stimulation. And the other kind is it's a wireless one that you attach to your house. The problem with a lot of the brands that make these is that there's not enough levels. So there's only like 4 or 8 levels. Well, the problem is that if your dog doesn't feel 4 and 5 is a huge jump from 4 to 5, it's not very nice. For me, I would rather teach the dog their boundaries with a remote training collar and then install the wireless fence. That way they actually understand what stimulation is and it's not a traumatic event. Harnesses, okay, there are so many different kinds of harnesses and it really just depends on what job it is you want your dog to do. Do you want them to pull a sled? Do you want them to pull a cart? Do you want them not to pull? So this is what I find very ironic is that harnesses, if you look over the millennia, have been used for what? You put them on an animal, people even put them on slaves to get them to do what? To pull. So there are all kinds of now like no pull type harnesses where you connect it on and you get the dog not to pull. It's engaging their strongest muscles of their body to get them not to pull. Now there are ones that clip up in the front. What I've been told and what I've seen is that it actually changes the dog's gait. So their natural mobility is inhibited because their shoulders are getting pulled together, and I'm not a big fan of that. So for me, a harness is to get a dog to pull, which I love when my dogs pull things. So you just need to find the right harness for the job. For sled dogs, you probably see something like this, a big long, this is a huge one, X-back where it connects, where the connection is at the back so that the dog can pull a sled. Versus this is a protection harness, so it kind of comes across the chest so that they can put lots of pressure and do their job. Tracking harness, a little different. Another reason that I'm not a huge fan of harnesses to get a dog to walk nicely is because you can be pulling them one way and they're still looking at the squirrel or the cat or the person that way. You don't have any control over where they're looking. Now, I'm a huge fan of harnesses for puppies. I think it's the thing to do because puppies don't walk nicely on a leash. So yeah, you can teach them over time, but a lot of the time they just go, ooh, butterfly, oh, what's this, oh, what's that? So I don't want any pressure on their throat. They're developing, they're growing, they're gonna pull anyway. They might as well be on something that's designed to pull. And then I just work on my leash walking with my puppy as they get older, and then I can switch to a different tool around the 6-7 month mark. Okay, head halters. This is a super popular option. I'm becoming more and more of a big fan of them. For me, I don't want to fight the dog too much, so if it's just going to be an ongoing constant battle with the dog, I'm going to switch to a neck collar. I really like these because it controls where the dog is looking, similar to a neck collar, and unlike a harness because the dog just has full motion of their head. They also have a nice public appeal. They're certainly a lot prettier than a prong collar, and people claim that there's no pressure on the dog. However, newsflash, if you put anything on a dog and connect a leash to it and the dog moves one way and you move the other, there's going to be pressure. However, this is still a great option because it gives you control around their muzzle and the back of their head, so it's really supporting the whole thing. This is not a tool if you need to actually have a consequence and correct the dog. Leash pop doesn't work with this so well. Often the buckle will hit them under the chin, and that's not really what I want. They are really good at keeping a dog's head up. If you have a dog that is just constantly head to the ground, like a hound or something like that, or most dogs really, it allows you to keep their head up because the connection is often under the chin. You'll see in this program, there's a whole video on it that I like to use a gentle leader because you can transition it from a gentle leader to just a regular collar once they learn how to walk properly. And then there's the Halti brand, which doesn't convert, very similar to a gentle leader. And then there's the snoot loop or the schnoot loop or something like that, the schnoodly doop, which is for like a pug or a bulldog or a dog that doesn't have much of a nose and kind of goes over and creates a mask of a collar for the dog. And then there's a transitional leash, which is a slip lead, and it's also a gentle leader type tool that goes over the snout and behind the head. All great options, but again, it's got to work for the dog. If the dog is absolutely miserable wearing it and refuses to walk properly with it, all of these tools take time. But if the dog is just thrashing and you can't actually walk the dog, time to try a different tool. And then we've got clickers, the world's most annoying sound, unless you're a dog and it means food. Clickers are fantastic. There's all different kinds of shapes and sizes of clickers. I'm a big fan of this one because it's very quick. I'm not sure if this is classified as a box clicker, but a box clicker you put your finger into. I'd recommend going to a store and trying different clickers. Criteria for me is that I can click very quick click. And essentially this is just a marking tool. You can use your voice, good, here's some food, or click, here's some food. The ways you can use this is break, you're all done, or that's the move, that's the position right there, don't move. And then break, you're free. Very fun tool, almost essential for free shaping in my opinion. All right, there are so many different kinds of leashes out there. I feel like it looks like a United Nations meeting. So in my toolbox, I've got 4 different kinds of leashes. I've got a tab, which is basically just a leash cut off right here, and I just tie a knot right there. That's great for if I'm playing fetch with the dog and I just need to pick it up, or my dog's really great at off-leash walking, but I want to be able to grab them so that if a dog comes by or something that I actually have hands on them, and it just dangles about that far so that way they're not getting tripped up over it. Then I've got a regular 5 or 6 foot leash for leash walking. And then you've got a long line, which is about 15 to 30 foot leash. Some people call it a drag line, and it's for exactly that. Practicing recall, your dog's running around, maybe you need to step on the leash. Fantastic for puppies so that you can get your hands on them while they're in the area, because Lord knows they're all faster than we are. Sometimes with a long line, I like to tie knots throughout the line so that if I need to step on it, it's not going to slide through my feet. Everybody should have a long line. And then there's the infamous retractable leash. This thing in the dog training community is basically the prince of evil. The reason that these are actually banned in a lot of cities is how people use them. So this is 15 feet and people just let the dog go willy-nilly. They're on their cell phone, the dog's in the middle of the intersection causing accidents. Oh yeah, sure, no problem. It really, like any tool, it's how you use it. The other thing that I'm not a huge fan of is, boom, when this thing hits the end of 15 feet, oh, it comes right out of your arm. I saw a girl the other day with a St. Bernard attached to one of these, and the dog wanted to leave the store before she did. Let's just hope she's got some money in the bank for shoulder surgery. My God, it was bad. So the reason I like these little buggers, they come in different sizes for different sized dogs. However, as you can see, this one already got broke. This is something that I use later on when I'm doing recall training and I know that the dog's probably going to come back to me quite efficiently. That way I don't need to drag 15 to 30 feet of leash. The dog can just go and come smooth as butter. Fantastic tool for training inside as well. So not only is the length of leash very important, but also the type of leash. So there's a few considerations. It's what kind of material do I like, but also maybe what's good for the environment and whose hands made this leash. And what I mean by that is if you're buying cheap leather, somebody's paying for that. Not only the animal that it came from, but the people that had to tan the leather. If you want to know more about that, watch True Cost, which is a documentary about the fashion industry. And then we've got cotton. Is it regular cotton? Is it organic cotton? I personally like the biothane. I realize that it's a petroleum product, but the product is tough. I had the same leash for the past 6 years. Besides the fact that it's super strong, is that it's really easy to wash off. It doesn't stay wet. I can just rinse it off, towel, boom, it's dry. It's easy to spot because it's orange or other bright color. But there's also a practical side of this too, of if you have a dog that really wants to bite at the leash, maybe you get a chain leash. There's a lot of things to consider when picking the right leash for you. So it's nice when you can just have 1 or 2 leashes that you really enjoy and you don't need to keep buying leash after leash. A few of my favorites are in the product section. And that's tools. It's gotta be right for you and it's gotta be right for the dog. Go try them out.